So when people said, how many children do you have? I'd say 2 boys, 2 girls, and an angel. And that's
Aw.
truly what he was. He was truly an angel, brought a lot of love and joy to everyone he met. He went on to school. He was in a special class. He thrived. He even went to Marple Newtown High School, where he went on class trips, went on cruises, went on anything that was going on in the hospital. Ralph was always a part of. He was adored and loved, and so many people took him under his wing, especially the girls at Marple Newtown who escorted him on the many class trips.
Gina
So Ralph,
and Judy. I remember their names. Gina and Judy. They used to
yes,
talk.
yeah, had a great personality and just did very well. And then a dear friend of ours saw his potential, Dr. Frank Cianciulli, and he suggested that Ralph get a job under his program at Mr. Fitzgerald Mercy. And he got Ralph a job where he flourished, and then eventually ended up in material services with Dr. Bill Carlin, who loved Ralph and Ralph loved him. They'd have lunch together every day. And then when Bill left, it was Larry, who was also very good to Ralph. And finally, after many surgeries for hernias, Ralph was finally able to quit his job, as he wasn't able to carry on the duties of heavy lifting and all. And the hospital was not compliant and giving him something less. And I was surprised for a Catholic hospital to have this attitude. But all things prevail. And doctor, I can't think of his name right now, but the doctor said, he did not want him to work in that heavy thing because it would activate the hernia again. So Ralph was home and accompanied me on all my trips. He was like tied to my hip. We went to the casino, which he loved. We listened to music in the car where he'd be swinging and dancing, and he just loved it. He just loved life, and he was a joy to everyone that knew him.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of things I want to go back to, Mom. So yes, Dr. Cianciulli, like huge shout out to him, because I know you and Dad weren't sure what he was going to do after he graduated, Ralph. But I want to go back in time even before that, because he had wonderful teachers, and I want you to tell the story of Mrs. Izumi and how she called you and Dad in for a conference when Ralph was about 8 years old.
Yes, she called us in and she said, Ralph has potential. He doesn't belong in this class. I'd like to see him moved up. She worked with him, and she even had him take piano lessons from her husband, Dr. Izumi, who taught Ralph for about 6 months until he contacted Tic de la Rue and had to give up the piano playing. But Ralph also took dance lessons at Arthur Murray's and took part in a lot of the showcases they had. And he was just a
Yes.
joy to be around. He loved life. He loved people, and it showed.
No, he did. And I remember, I think it was Bill Carlin that used to tell you, I wish I could clone him because he was such a good worker. Ralph was so conscientious and he loved data entry. I remember that. He loved computers. He loved data entry. He always wanted to help people. So I remember a time, now we had a friend, he became a friend, but Dominic, who you hired initially to pick Ralph up from work. So he used to go into work with Dad. And I just remember Dad always saying how he and Ralph used to have the best conversations in the car on the way to work. It was so cute. And I remember Dad sometimes waking him up for work, and Ralph didn't want to get up because it was early, and he'd be rubbing his head. And poor Ralph lost his hair. That's another story. But I just remember how Dominic was waiting. Now, this was in the days before nobody had a cell phone back then. This was the 80s. And Dominic was waiting in their usual spot, and Ralph was never coming out. And he went in, and there was Ralph behind the reception desk answering the phones, because apparently the woman the receptionist had asked Ralph, hey, Ralph, I have to go to the ladies' room. Do you mind manning the phones for a couple of minutes until I get back? And I just think that's amazing.
And it was funny. He'd say, hello, this is Fitzgerald Mercy. May I help you, please? But
Yes.
anyhow, the other story about the casino, which was interesting, was the other day I went to the casino with a friend of mine, and this couple came up and they said, oh my God, how are you? They were so good to Ralph. They would always save a machine for him at the poker table where all the machines were. And they loved Ralph and they looked forward to him. And they were so sad to learn that he had passed, because I hadn't seen him in a couple years. But they were so good to him. And then this other Black woman, Barbara, she loved Ralph. She started to cry when I told her that Ralph passed on. So he met many nice people at the casino. In addition to winning money, he was great at cards. He was sharp. He really was. He read.
Yeah.
John Grisham was his favorite author, and he loved John Cena. He loved wrestling. He loved football, and he loved Cole Hamels, and he had his favorite.